So I understand that we're connected to the Science Center right now. Is that true?
That is true, yes. Can you hear us?
We are seeing you and we are hearing you. Do you hear us?
Just to test the other microphone. Kopra, can you hear us at the International Space Station?
I hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can definitely hear you. I hope you heard the applause here as well. We are very honored and happy to hear from you, and we are here with about 200 fans and at Heurekasta listening.
Well, tervetuloa, welcome to Space Station, and I am very privileged to be able to speak with all of you tonight. And I'm so glad that you stayed up late so that we can have a little bit of a chat tonight.
Excellent. I know that we have about half an hour to go. My name is Tapio Koivu. I'm the CEO of Heurekasta, and here I also have Anne Liljeström and Jari Mäkinen, who are experts to help me with the questions. And we do also have collected a bunch of questions from the audience. And I suggest that we just move on to the questions right away, because this is something that's that we all have been anxiously waiting for.
Well, I look forward to the questions. You know, it feels like just a very short time ago that my family and I were exactly where you are right now. And we had such a great experience there, and it's a great moment for me to be able to be on Space Station again and also share a little bit about life on Space Station with all of you tonight.
Excellent. Okay, we move on to the questions, and the first one will come from Henry Rantala. Go ahead, Henry.
Good evening, sir. My question is, can you bring any souvenirs from space, for example, like micrometeors or something? Thank you.
Oh, sure. Well, you know, I think it would be very difficult to bring any micrometeors back. But, you know, in terms of souvenirs, we can bring a few things back with us. You know, one souvenir that is allowed, and I think all of us that have done spacewalks particularly like, are some wire ties. And these wire ties we use for different kinds of tasks outside on a spacewalk. And it's a nice remembrance of our work outside, and actually, frankly, the whole team that's involved with the spacewalk. So that's one example of a souvenir that we can bring back. But, you know, mostly we bring a few items with us to remind us of home, and some books to read, some pictures of our family, and we bring those back. And we try to take photographs of those, especially for friends that have given us a few items, so we can give those back with their remembrance or our remembrance of that being in space, and they can have that token of our trip here on Space Station.
Well, thanks very much. The next question actually comes from Rosa Kuusisto. Rosa is 12 years old. Go ahead, Rosa.
What do I need to study? What do I need to study if I want to be an astronaut?
Rosa, it's a great question. You know, I think that the most important thing for young people to do, and especially early on, like yourself, when you still have a huge future in front of you and you're trying to make decisions on what you want to do and what's important. But I think that my personal passion is math, science, and engineering, and of course the great technology that we're able to use here on Space Station. And I think that it's a great foundation for all young people, because when anybody learns a new area, especially in a hard technical area that's very difficult, to me it's like money in the bank, because you can always use that in the future. And for a future astronaut like yourself, I think it's a very valuable area in which to study, because our job here is very, very technical, and it's very important to have that technical background. And what it does is allows you to move forward if you decided to study even more in a particular area of engineering or science. When you have that foundation, it allows you to do that in college and then even postgraduate work. So I think that math, science, and engineering foundation is very, very powerful. Among the astronauts that are in the astronaut corps, we have a wide variety of different occupations, mostly technical though. We have medical doctors as well that have become astronauts, and clearly their path has been a little bit different than myself, for example, that was much more focused on engineering and math. But there are lots of viable paths to become an astronaut, and I would encourage any young person who has that as their aspiration to look at what other astronauts have done in terms of their career path, and if something that they've done inspires you to work in that area, then that's what I would recommend.
Excellent. Thanks, Rosa. We have to bear in mind your name and see what happens in 20 years. Well, also, many of the kids have sent us a very same question, and they do want to know if you're scared when you go on a space journey.
You know, it's a good question, and perhaps I should be more scared than I've been because, you know, frankly, our job has lots of risks involved. But I think that by virtue of the fact that we've gone through training, and not just training in general, but training with our crewmates, that it builds a lot of confidence in not only yourself, but the team in order to get the job done. And so, although I wouldn't say that that there's fear among us, I would say that before very dynamic events like a launch or a spacewalk, there is a lot of anticipation. And so I would say that we're tense and we're very focused. But because of our training base, I think that all of us are very focused on just getting the job done. And even though your heart may beat a little bit faster and you may be a little bit more tense than usual, by and large, I think we're very focused on the task, and it's really due to the tremendous team on the ground that's trained us and prepared us for spaceflight.
Thanks. Now Jari has a question which is a little bit more technical, I believe.
In fact, we can see that you are inside GEM, the Japanese experiment module. Could you show a little bit around what we can see? Some windows and what is around you? We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you now.
Kind of lost the voice.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
That's
Yes.
all right now. Good. Go ahead.
Okay, very good. So we probably don't have time to do a full tour of Space Station, although I'd love to do that. But I can at least show you this Japanese module. Behind us, we have an airlock, and this is a door out into space. In fact, we've deployed several satellites through this airlock. They go inside this chamber, the hatch closes, it's depressurized to a vacuum, and then a Japanese robotic arm is able to move that payload outside, whether it's an experiment or, in the case of our experiments, small satellites that we've deployed. And so I'll take the camera just to turn a little bit. I'll point the camera the opposite direction. And so we have a very large station. It's probably the equivalent of a 3,000 square foot home, about a 5-bedroom house. This is pointing back towards the Columbus module on the opposite end, which is from the European Space Agency. And right before that, you see lots of bags that are stowed. We received lots of food from the last two vehicles, and that's temporarily stowed there until we're able to pack it away in its proper place. But that area right there is called Node 2, and Node 2 is where all four of us sleep. It's 3 United States and European astronauts sleep, and then one of our Russian colleagues, and then we have 2 additional Russian colleagues who sleep down in the Russian segment. So it's a very, very brief tour of a very small piece of Space Station, but I wanted to at least show you that piece of it.
Great, thanks. Anne has the next question.
Yes, we were talking about the radiation content of the ISS earlier, and I wanted to ask you, have you seen those like flashing inside your eyes due to cosmic rays? Does it happen?
Yeah, you know, it's very unusual. When you go to sleep at night, we live in a little crew quarters, and our crew quarters is about the size of a refrigerator, a large refrigerator, but not very big. And so we sleep in this this area that we can make very dark. And at nighttime, you'll see little flashes, and it looks like a little pin prick of light, or perhaps it's a streak of light. And so all of us see that, and it's radiation that's made it through the structure here on Space Station and has gone through our eyes. So it's a strange phenomenon. And you know, we have some protection for radiation, but really the primary protection for radiation here on Space Station is the magnetosphere that's protecting us. So it's an area that we need to understand even better when we go beyond low Earth orbit, because the radiation environment will be that much more harsh. Great question.
Thank you. I have a question since we learned that you are up there for the second time, and you have a perspective on looking at Earth from up there. Has this changed the way you look at the world altogether?
You know, perhaps it has changed the way that I look at the world altogether. One thing that I'm very grateful for is the fact that I've had more time up here on Space Station. Last time I was here for 2 months, this time for 6 months. And so being here longer and spending more time looking out the window, you really gain an appreciation for how interconnected the world is. And even though the world it's big, we go around it every 90 minutes, and we have so many memories of different places that we've seen on our beautiful planet. And so I think probably the lessons that I've learned, or the things that stick with me the most, is that you can see a very lively planet, both from the standpoint of human activity, but also from the standpoint of our environment. We see tremendous storms. I've seen lightning storms that cover a large portion of a continent, and lightning storms that continually flash. We've seen beautiful cities at night, and if with the cameras we have on board, you're able to see ships going through channels. So I think that's probably one of the things that has struck me the most. Something else that may not be as obvious is the fact that when you look out beyond Earth and you look at the black that's beyond the lit Earth, it makes you recognize that really we're quite alone, and the next heavenly body besides our moon is very, very far away, and that's probably very striking. In fact, it really hits you deeply, I think, especially the first time you see how black space is, and so it makes you appreciate what we do have on our own planet.
Thanks. Handing over to Anne.
Yes, I have a question from Anne Rutanen, who would like to know, do you miss the sense of the nature up there?
I think I definitely miss it. You know, I think I'll recognize how much I missed it when we land here in about 3 weeks. You know, I've talked to my fellow crewmates that have landed on a Soyuz in Kazakhstan before, and one of the things that's very, very striking to them is the smell of grass and the smell of earth. And so I really look forward to that. I think that when I return, I'll recognize how much I've really missed it.
And over to Jari.
Yeah, we have one question from the audience as well. Do you do any practical jokes or pranks to each other over there?
You know, none that I'll really admit to. But I will say that, you know, it's very important to have a very strong and tight crew, and humor is a very delicate thing, right? You have to be very careful when you have a small crew that's living together all the time, that humor is always in good spirit. And so the pranks that I've seen here on board have always been in that line, but clearly that's something that has to be considered.
Okay, well, that was a very diplomatic answer. Thanks for that. The next comes from the audience, and Kirsi Kannisto will make the next question. Go ahead.
Hi, Tim. We were wondering, what kind of steps do you need to take when you come to the gravity next time, 1 month's time?
I'm sorry, what do I need to take?
Do you need to take when you come back to gravity in 1 month's time?
I'm very sorry. The very first part of your transmission cut out.
So how does it feel when you come back to Earth?
The first time I came back to Earth, it was pretty harsh actually, because what I've learned is that the human body and the human mind can very well adapt to its environment. And when I was here for 2 months before, I was perfectly adapted to zero gravity. I could move around like this, and it was really no problem at all. But the problem is that when you come back to gravity, your body is very used to that environment. So your neurovestibular system is completely turned off, and so it's sort of a rude awakening. What I've learned from my crewmates that have had more than one flight is that your body remembers, and it's a little bit easier the next time. And one of the things that we're doing right now, Tim Peake and I, and I'm sure that Yuri is doing very similar things, is trying to condition our body, especially for that return to 1G. And so we spend more time on our treadmill in a passive mode. That means that we have to work harder, and stretching and other things, because it's a little bit disorienting. And hopefully this time around it'll be a little bit smoother, and we'll transition back. But even with a harsh transition back to 1G, it only takes a couple days to feel like you're somewhat normal, and then about maybe 2 weeks to feel like you definitely have your land legs back.
Okay, thanks. I have a question that's from the audience as well. It's about what kind of food do you miss the most? And since it's also Friday, are you able to actually have a Friday beer?
I should probably talk to my management about that. That would be a great thing to have, because we don't have any on board. It's very unfortunate. I think the kind of food that I miss the most is really fresh food. We have very good food up here. We have great variety, but we don't have fresh tomatoes and fresh onions, for example, unless they come up on one of the cargo vehicles. We don't have lettuce, those kinds of things. So I think my first meals will be fresh salads and fresh vegetables.
Okay, and over to Anne now.
Yes, could you tell us about the social aspects of space travel a bit more? Is it hard to live together in such a small space?
No, you'd be surprised how big Space Station feels. I mean, first of all, it is big in and of itself, but it even feels bigger, I think, because when you live in a volume, every surface is something that you can use. So what that means is that if someone is down here working away, you can just float over the top of them with no problem. And so that definitely gives you the sense that the place is bigger than it would if it was simply a house. So it never feels cramped. But in terms of how we work together, it works out very well, because some of our tasks are together. A lot of tasks we do individually, and then we come together for meals. And then at nighttime, we go into our little crew quarters, make phone calls to home. So it feels like a very natural sort of thing, actually, here on board Space Station.
Okay, thanks. And Jari has the next one.
Yeah, we have a question from Nicholas, who is 8 years old and definitely sleeping right now. He wants to know how difficult it is to steer yourself and go where you want to go when you go out on a spacewalk. So how do you manage to move outside of the space station? You have some experience already on that.
It's a very insightful question from a smart young man. When you go out into space, the whole principle of Newton's principle of equal and opposite reaction is completely true. I push myself down and I go down, and it takes very little force. And so we're trained in a neutral buoyancy lab, which is a huge swimming pool, and we have divers that put in weights and foam to try to keep us neutrally buoyant, and it does a decent job of preparing us for a spacewalk. But the real preparation for a spacewalk is the spacewalk itself, because it is a little bit challenging to control yourself. In fact, initially, it's easy to over-control. If you just turn your hand like that, all of a sudden your body turns, and you have to put in an opposite reaction to control it. So what you learn to do is to be very, very gentle, and you learn to use some of the tools we have to keep you secured in place. Even though it may only be a line, at least it prevents you from 1 degree of freedom. And then we also have tools where we put our feet into a restraint, and we have another tool that's a ball stack that hooks onto a handrail and keeps us stable. So between our training and the tools that we have, we're able to move around and definitely orient ourselves for a particular work site. Great question.
Thanks. Well, we learned that you can't definitely take a run outside, but how do you then keep fit when you're inside the station?
How do we, how do we use our feet on station?
And what do you do for exercise?
Well, we exercise over 2 hours every day. You know, we have a stationary bike, and the stationary bike is mounted to a wall, and it's isolated from station in that it has springs, and that way we don't impart loads onto this big space station. And then we have a treadmill, and the treadmill works with a bungee cord and a harness. So we put on a harness over our body. The bungee cords pull us down to the treadmill, and then we run. And we can make it feel as if we're heavier or lighter depending on how we adjust this bungee cord. And then we have a weightlifting machine, and this weightlifting machine is very, very important to us because one of the effects of zero gravity is a loss of bone density and muscle mass. And what this device allows us to do is all the same kind of weightlifting of core muscles that you would do on the ground, like deadlift and squats and bench presses and lots of different exercises. By putting that load on our joints and our bones, we're able to mitigate a lot of the effects of zero gravity in terms of loss of bone density and muscle mass. So all of us look forward to exercise every day.
Well, healthy exercise and a healthy diet seems very great place to be. Anne has the next
It's
question.
like a spa.
So a moment ago you told us about how you can feel like the Earth is connected. I've got a question that is slightly more tragic from Arto Pitsinki. He wants to know, can you see all the wars on Earth from space?
You know, it's a good question. You know, what can you actually see from here? You really don't see the devastation of warfare unless you take one of our largest lenses and you focus on a particular area, and then you could see buildings that were damaged, or you could see scorched earth. When I was here last time, I could see oil fires in Iraq, and those were quite visible. It really takes a very monumental, a huge catastrophic event for us to be able to see it with the naked eye. But with our lenses here, we can focus in and we can see lots of activity on the Earth, to include warfare, which is, you know, highly unfortunate. And, you know, thankfully, it's a very big planet, and the areas that you actually see devastation is very, very small from a global sense.
That's comforting. Jari has the next one from the audience as well.
Yeah, we are tracking now ISS here, and we can see that you are approaching Africa right now over the Atlantic. And we have another question from I don't know what is the name, but from a young girl who wants to know, what is the most beautiful thing you have seen from space? And I can add, can you see Africa approaching as well?
Oh my goodness, there's so many beautiful things that we've seen from space station. It's pretty difficult to select, but I have a long list. And if I wasn't talking with you all tonight, I could float over to a window and I could definitely see Africa. I'm looking at a map right now, and I was just checking you to make sure that we really were flying over West Africa. Looks like we'll cross the coastline here in just a couple minutes. We're traveling at 5 miles a second, so it won't be very long. But in terms of the most beautiful things, on my short list would be the Bahamas and the coral reefs there. There are coral reefs off the coast of off of Mozambique and near Madagascar that are absolutely beautiful. I love looking at the cities at night. You can really tell a lot about a city when you take a photograph and you can look at all the streets and how they're laid out and how humans interact on the planet in that big city just by the lights. Thunderstorms at night, the lightning is tremendous. Sometimes you'll see lightning storms that flash, and it's almost as if one lightning storm initiates another, and it's just a constant spectrum of lightning flashes for a long period of time. Those are ones that really stand out to me, and it's really hard to pick, frankly, because there's so many beautiful places. I actually managed to get a great picture of Finland, albeit from a distance. Our inclination is at 51.6 degrees, and what that means is that we don't quite get close enough to Finland to take really good pictures. But I was able to see Helsinki in the distance, and the water, and you can see, and especially because I know, you could see that there's beautiful forests and lakes. I wish I could get even closer. Maybe the next space station will have an inclination that allows us to get even closer.
We are hoping for that. But how about auroras?
You know what? That's also on my list, and so I'm thankful that you reminded me. One time, I was at the cupola, and actually, I was shutting all the shutters at nighttime. I have a routine, and I go through space station and make sure that we put it to bed, put the lights out, and close the shutters. And I thought that maybe there was a light that was on in the cupola, this strange green light. And so I floated down to the cupola, and it was as if we were flying directly through an aurora. We were completely immersed in green, and it was a little overwhelming. And so I ran and got a camera, and I caught some pieces of it. But wow, it was an amazing sight. The auroras are completely breathtaking here.
Well, that's great to hear. I just have to add also that I do hope that you heard that our president Sauli Niinistö also liked your picture of Finland on his Facebook page and sent his regards as well. But
oh, that's awesome, and what an honor.
I have a little bit of a different question. What happens if you actually get sick?
It's a good question. You know, what do you do here? Because we only have the 6 of us, and you know, there's always a possibility of something going wrong. First of all, they make sure that we're pretty darn healthy before we come up here. We're very well screened. I think that there's not very much that they could possibly not know about my physical condition inside and out by the time that we come here. And that's true for every crew member. But then on board, we have a great supply of different kinds of medicines and medical devices in the case of a need for one of those. But we're also trained to be crew medical officers. And so for a wide variety of ailments and illnesses and accidents, we're well trained to take care of those. And if it were something beyond what we're trained, we'll be tied into a medical staff that's listening right now, and they would be able to help us, and they would bring everything they could to bear to help us with the equipment we have on board to help each other.
Okay, thanks. How are we doing now time-wise? Do we have still time for one more question at least?
I'm looking at the clock here, and we definitely have time.
Good. Jari?
What will be the first task for you tomorrow morning? Do you have any spare time?
We do have some spare time, thankfully, and we need it too, because we work very hard during the week. Tomorrow is Saturday. It turns out that I have a large portion of the day off, which is a great thing, and I'm very thankful for. My first task is cleaning, and we divide up the modules here on Space Station so that we all have a few modules that we vacuum and we wipe down. And so when I wake up in the morning, and it won't be super early because I plan on sleeping in a little bit, I'll pull out the vacuum cleaner, I'll vacuum the vents that I'm responsible for, take some disinfectant wipes and wipe those down. And once all 3 of us on the U.S. segment of Space Station are complete, then we're done with our cleaning task for the day. But then in addition to that, I plan on taking some photographs and calling home and taking some free time.
Okay, Anne.
One more question? Yeah?
Sure.
Sure. So, what is the most fun experiment you've done there?
The most fun experiment, one that I particularly liked, was one that involved combustion. We have a science glove box, and inside that science glove box were different devices allowed us to burn material to determine the effects of zero gravity on the flammability of certain materials. And so to burn something in space, that was pretty cool. I like that a lot. But you know, what's interesting about space is that there's lots of different basic science that we do up here, because zero gravity has sort of a strange effect on things. Things don't always behave in the same manner that you would anticipate. Like, for example, in that combustion experiment, it looked as if there was like this ball of flame sometimes if there was no airflow. It looked very, very strange. You know, one thing that's also interesting is that fluid doesn't behave the same way. And we have an entire experiment rack that's designed specifically for fluid. But just to give you an example of what it's like with fluid here on board Space Station, this is my drink bag. This is an orange drink that I have. What's strange is that fluids behave differently because the surface tension makes it stick together. The surface tension on the fluid makes it stick together. And so here's a little ball of water. And it's just unusual that water forms this way. It doesn't just spill out and lay flat, but it also will stick to things. So it just sticks to my finger. It sort of engulfs it. So love to play with water. You know, if you put a little drop of Alka-Seltzer in this, then it expands because it bubbles up. It's an antacid. It bubbles up and then looks like a big foam ball. And I could take a straw here and blow it up. This is an example of how things are just different up here, and we have lots of formal experiments, but a lot of us will just play with things too because it's a lot of fun.
Oh man. That was just something amazing and awesome. Thanks so much. And we do thank you for this half an hour that you have spent with us. I know that our time is up. I just want to convey this from us. I hope we can all join in shouting to Tim, hyvää yötä, good night in Finnish. Okay, hyvää yötä. I do hope you heard that.
Thank you so much. I sure did, and it's been a pleasure talking with all of you. I hope to meet all of you in person someday when I get back to planet Earth and visit Finland.
Well, we look forward to that.